All right, everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf Podcast, and today we are excited to have on the show Craig Studnicky. He is in South Florida and the CEO of a brokerage in South Florida, RelatedISG. Craig, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me today. Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit today. Right now, just to preface, we were talking earlier about your position in Miami. You are partners with, I think, the biggest condo developer, and they're also a big commercial developer. Tell us a little bit more about who you are today.
Sure. Today, I'm the CEO and the broker of record of a company called RelatedISG. We are partners with the Related Group, which is headed by Jorge Perez and his sons. Related is the single biggest developer. It used to be just condominiums. Now it's everything. It's commercial, it's multifamily apartments, condos for sure, throughout the entire South Florida region. They're also partners with the Related Companies in New York City, which is headed by Jorge Perez's partner, Steve Ross, who is also the largest developer in New York City and the owner of the Miami Dolphin football team. They put me in charge of their general real estate company about 10 years ago. And I run that company. And that's after being in this business. I've been in the business now for a total of 40 years. I'm in my early 60s.
40 years. Okay.
40. Long time.
You've done it since you were born.
Feels like it. Yeah. Yeah, it feels like it. Right out of college in the early 80s. Yeah. Yeah, starting really 1980. And real estate's that kind of business where if it touches your DNA, you're in trouble because you're going to get into this business and you're just not going to want to stop thinking about it.
If real estate touches if it touches your DNA, you're in trouble.
Yes, exactly.
You're going to be in it 40-something years before you know it, even though
you can't stop thinking about it. You can't stop thinking about the people that you meet. You can't stop. You just can't. And they don't stop thinking about you when you meet similar like-kind human beings.
And it gives that opportunity. So you got into this business in the 80s?
Yeah, 1980.
As a real estate agent?
As a real estate agent, working for a developer on site in New York City selling condos as a developer sales agent. And I knew as much about real estate as I today know about flying the space shuttle. I guess I was not personable enough to let people trust me and hopefully like me. But boy, oh boy, when I look back, when I think about what I knew about real estate compared to what I know now, what I know today, I think my little bit of success early on was just based on pure determination and a real positive attitude. Today, hopefully I still have those same two things, but now I have 4 decades of experience, therefore knowledge that I lean on every single hour of every single day of my life.
Wow.
It's an exciting, incredible business. It's just so dynamic. Every single week is different from the previous week. It's been like that all my life.
Yeah. It'd be tough to be bored. So you were
Oh my God. Yeah.
You were an agent so first of all, you got in, I love what you just said, determination and positivity. And that prepared luck to land in your way and success. And then learning and experience along the way. In the 80s.
In the 80s.
What did this business look like in the 80s?
That's a good question. Oh God, when I think back on it, it was Jimmy Carter was president. We had just come out of an energy crisis and that Watergate scandal, remember all that?
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, a whole bunch of factors managed to come together to raise interest rates to the highest level that I've ever seen in my career, maybe the highest level ever in the history of the United States. Imagine quoting somebody a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at 17%. Not kidding. The prime rate was over 20%. We were in a deep recession. Part of the reason Jimmy Carter was only. Pardon me?
The opposite of now.
180 degrees from now. I must tell you that when I hear agents tell me when mortgage rates go up 1/4 of a point from 3.0 to 3.25, and they want to cry me a river, I'm like, would you snap out of it? You have 3.25 from 3.0 is nothing. These are the lowest mortgage rates we've ever seen in the history of the United States. They're going to remain like this for another 2 years.
Yeah.
For a whole bunch of reasons.
And everybody,
And this is,
yeah, it's the end of September 2021, but keep going. Yeah.
yeah, I have no doubt it'll be like this for 2023 for a whole bunch of reasons. I mean, anyway, that's what it was like in early 1980. We were dealing with incredibly high interest rates. And you know what I learned? I was still selling real estate. Imagine those kinds of interest rates. Your mortgage payment was tremendous, but people wanted to have a piece of the rock. And I learned the value of the pride of ownership. It is huge to own something, even though you're paying a lot of money for the benefit of owning it every single month. Back then, you owned it. You owned it. And I really got to understand how Americans, how people really do value the pride of owning something, or in real estate that we call the pride of ownership. Today, with these incredibly low mortgage rates, it's just a whole lot easier. But getting back to your question, yeah, that was the 80s. There weren't a lot of real estate projects getting developed. The United States population back then was under 300 million people, way under. It was probably closer to 270 million. The country was growing slowly. This is before the internet. It's before cell phones. When you absolutely had to get something to somebody overnight, you used this thing called Federal Express. That's the quickest way we could communicate anything in writing. Of course, we had phones, but everything was a hard line. And still, we managed to get things done. We managed to get things done very quickly. One major difference between that time of life versus today is when the bell rang at, say, 6 or 7 o'clock at night and you were finished, and you went out and socialized with some of your friends at a local bar or a restaurant or whatever, you really got to spend one-on-one time with your friends. You were not distracted with a text, a thing, a phone call coming in from these little contraptions we call cell phones. So in that regard, life was kind of, I don't know, a little more sincere maybe, because we just had a little more time to spend with our friends. But anyway, growth was slow. But growth was steady. What I noticed the most in the 80s, particularly when Ronald Reagan became president, first thing he did was he initiated a whole bunch of investment tax strategies to get the United States back on its feet, which worked in terms of lowering interest rates. The economy started booming. I found myself in 1983, 84, 85, 86, making an incredible amount of money selling real estate. For one reason, when I look back, I was in the right place at the right time. I was in I was in New York City. I was in good locations. After the tax incentives Ronald Reagan put in place were working, and I was enjoying a ride on this real estate roller coaster that was just wonderful. And I will tell you honestly, I thought so much of it was because of me. I thought I just was touched by God, that I had some kind of a unique talent going for me, which put me in this place. And then 1986, 87 came around. What does that mean? The U.S. Congress realized that some of the tax initiatives that Ronald Reagan put in place were not working. In fact, they called it voodoo economics. So long story short, they took a lot of these incentives away and caused one of the biggest real estate crashes that I ever experienced. Wow. That's when I realized that the hayride I was enjoying wasn't me. It was, I was enjoying the real estate cycle, and it humbled me completely. And I know that it made me a much better business person, a much better real estate agent, a much harder worker, and somebody who was very humbled and grateful to stay in the real estate business. And it also taught me something else. Real estate doesn't remain in a down cycle for long. It might stay in a down cycle for a year. It might stay in a down cycle for 18 months. But the up cycles last 3 times as long as the down cycles. And that is a great testament to the quality of the industry we call real estate. So that's something else I learned. So then I approached the 90s with a much more humble attitude. I moved to Miami and been here for 30 years. And I've seen a few cycles down here as well.
So you were saying a lot of important things, I think, earlier in your career. I think so many people, I know I can certainly relate. You come in the business, you have a lot of positivity, you have a lot of determination, you hustle some deals through, you get going, and there are different things. And whether we want to call it taxes or politics or whatever, that definitely influence our lives more than we think and know. And then as you ride through that, you learn some lessons about, what did you learn about at the end of the day? There are things outside of your control that you're going to be successful and unsuccessful as a result of. But I noticed there's kind of okay, and then the 90s and I came to Miami, and then there's something that sounds like you learned in your career.
Yeah, well, I guess I learned never to get attached to my results, to make a long story short. My successes were not strictly because of me. It was a combination of a lot of factors that just benefited me because I was in the right place at the right time. On the contrary, I learned not to get attached to my failures. When the real estate market crashed, I was kind of extended on a lot of investments that went the wrong way. Yeah, I lost a bunch of money. But I learned not to get attached to those either, because that was kind of outside my control too. And when I saw the real estate market recover, as it did in the late 80s, early 90s, I realized that real estate is like this. It's going to be cyclical. It's going to be a ride. You got to time it right. You've got to, don't ever get attached to these crazy successes or these crazy failures that you experience, because that's just real estate. And the other thing I learned, which has served me extremely well even today, is to surround myself with mentors that know a lot more about this game than I do, and learn and learn and learn. Ask questions and learn. It minimizes your mistakes, and it keeps you more reserved from ever getting attached to your own ego during an upcycle. Mentors are probably the key to anyone's success, not just in real estate, but perhaps in any industry. So that's one of the other lessons I got from this.
I love that. Just to reiterate for everybody listening, they always thank me for doing this, by the way. But number one, don't get attached to your results. Number two, you got to time it right. Those were like lessons learned, and then implementing it was being around the right people and having mentors, people who know more than you, and doing that. Learn, and always. I love the last thing you said, because this is in everything. Asking questions, and ask the right questions.
Yes, and something else. There are a lot of angels that appear in your life from time to time. A lot, and they come in different times of your life for different reasons, because of the needs that you have. The needs that I had in my 20s are very different than the needs that I have today in my early 60s. So consequently, I have different mentors that surround me today for different reasons, because I have different questions. And what I've found about what's so wonderful about life is, if you're open to it and you're actually searching for it, you will find mentors to guide you along the way during various stages of your life. That requires, a lot of modesty from the individual to realize that you don't have the answers, that you have a lot of questions, and you will be, I think if you come to the dance with that kind of an open-minded modesty, you will be very surprised at how life meets you with a lot of human beings that are there to help you and guide you along the way. I don't think I was quite open-minded to that in my 20s. I started becoming open-minded to that in my 30s, which was the 90s for me. And when I saw the benefit of that mentorship from some really smart men and women, I stayed in that lane for the rest of my career. Wow. And hopefully today I am, I'm playing it forward by mentoring some younger people under me.
Wow, what a great story. So I love what you said, angels. I always say everybody's an angel. Everybody knows stuff that we don't know.
Absolutely.
Do you have any examples? Like you're giving us basically like, I've learned things, I've had ahas in my business. Again, mentors, learn, ask questions. What's an example of, from your 20s to your 30s, do you have any story that just comes out in your mind of, I know I changed because this happened?
Yeah, I guess I'll give you, one example. It was 2009, the year after the disaster of 2008. I was sitting around this is before I started RelatedISG. I was a partner, and still am a partner, in a company called International Sales Group. That's what ISG comes from. That's a company that's designed just to represent developers here in South Florida. And it was 2009. the New York Times wrote a story about Miami and said, oh my God, there's about 10 years of standing foreclosed inventory in Miami. Miami is over. There's no reason to hurry up and go and get on a plane and run down to Miami to buy a condo because there's going to be plenty to buy for the next 10 years. Well, one of the things I learned along the way in selling is you can never sell anything without some sense of urgency. You better buy that 3-bedroom condo with the wraparound balcony that's facing the ocean. That's the only one left in this particular building. Well, what I just did was an example of scarcity, which creates urgency, which helps you close the deal. And there's nothing tricky about that, especially if it's grounded in the truth.
Yeah.
But when the New York Times writes a story that says, relax, there's 10 years of inventory. Well, who the hell am I to defeat that argument? And I went to a mentor of mine and I said to him, I'm thinking about closing my business and I don't know what I'm going to do. Why would you close your business? Well, because the New York Times just wrote the story. And this is long before, some people today like to refer to media as fake news. And I'm not one of those people, but I will tell you that the media doesn't always get it right. And my mentor friend, I'll tell you, his name is Tom Daly. He passed away 8 years ago, way too young. He kind of like slapped me around and made me think, there I go again, getting attached to my results. And he said, there's not 10 years of inventory. You go out. This was a very successful developer. In fact, he was partners with Jorge Perez from Related. You go out neighborhood by neighborhood, you count how many condos there really are for sale. And you're going to find there's not 10 years, Craig, and snap out of it. Okay, so I went out neighborhood by neighborhood and I counted 11,000, which was not the 25,000 the New York Times reported. And I assembled all this data and put it in a little report. And the report I called it the Miami Report because I didn't know what else to call it. And I named it like in about 3 seconds. Now, here's an example of a very dark moment in my business life where I was shored up by a mentor that I totally trusted, who convinced me to get out there and challenge the New York Times. And I did. 10 years later, I'm producing the Miami Report now 4 times a year, updating it quarterly, producing it in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Mandarin. It's become quite a staple and a branding statement of my company. And I can't begin to tell you how close I came to closing my business and just walking away because I got so caught up, not just in my personal stress from 2008, but the entire world stress from 2008. And this mentor, Tom Daly, may you rest in peace, sir. He told me, and to make a long story short, don't you dare give up. Go a different way. And I guess I just didn't give up.
What
and
else?
Now I've got
your opportunity was in your challenge.
It was, and now this Miami Report, it's privately, it's sweet humor to me when I get so many requests, mostly by email, sometimes by text. Craig, can you please give me an update? Can you give me an intra-quarter update on your Miami Report? Because I'm trying to close a commercial deal. I'm trying to close this big house on Golden Beach here in South Florida. And because I'm a member of the real estate community here, I always accommodate for free, gratis, happy to do it. Because it has come back to me. So it's funny that the Miami Report's become truly a wonderful, credible staple of information that real estate brokers, developers, owners of homes, residential, commercial, lenders, architects, lawyers, from all over the United States and South America have come to rely on as their go-to piece. And that's something that was created from the depths of serious anxiety that was created over 2008. So you never know what kind of headwind is going to blow you into a wonderful direction. You never know.
Like the biggest crisis, the Great Recession is what made me a top luxury agent. Before I was just kind of like taking the deals and closing them out and doing pretty well. And then when you're like, oh, you really got to readjust and look at the opportunity. Now, What do you attribute? And the other one was like, I love how you're like, look, like when I give like that, like it always comes back more. And it all comes down to this Miami Report that you put together. But that was that solution to a huge problem was a game shifter, was it not?
Oh, completely. Oh, well, first of all, it emboldened my own confidence in the South Florida market when I realized just how wrong the New York Times was. And by the way, New York Times said there was 10 years of inventory. Because I had half the inventory, I was bold enough to say, no, that's 5 years of inventory. In reality, in 2 years, it was all gone, which further bolstered my confidence in the attractiveness of Miami, of all of South Florida as a real estate marketplace. So, yeah, I mean, I realize it's had a nice impact on my colleagues and my competitors in this business. But what it did to me was much more meaningful. And just in terms of getting me to really respect just how wonderful and ripe the South Florida marketplace is from a real estate standpoint. So yeah, that's like the best example I can think of about a problem that turned into a really wonderful rebranding statement for my company, and it helped me reinvent myself. And you just referred to that yourself. You went through a downturn in the market, and you had to reinvent yourself. And when you came out of it, you're a top end, high end luxury agent that sellers of high end properties look to list their property. And all of the lessons that you learned about yourself from having to reinvent yourself is truly priceless, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. You're fun to talk to. I mean, everybody on this show is. I love this. So, looking at your career, you were a top agent pre-2009. You've been an agent since the 80s, and then it turned your career around. At what point? Because here you are, a top agent, but every top agent, I think they do it forever, and some go, I've got to grow, I've got to change, I've got to do it differently. It sounds like you're one that was like, yeah, this is great, but I've got to shift. What happened? What led you to where you are today?
Well, the shift occurred most recently. I'm really spend more of my time now running a general real estate company than I do project development sales. And that shift occurred because, I'm not an economist, but I have to pay attention to a lot of the political science issues that South America suffers with, because so much of the market demand up until 2021 in South Florida came from South America, from Argentina, from Brazil, from Colombia, from Mexico. Because of COVID, those economies have contracted seriously. And the US dollar has gained strength against all foreign currencies around the world. Now that happened. And at the same time, Americans are moving to the state of Florida in record numbers. Last year in 2020, we were the second fastest growing state behind Texas, still at 900 a day. And it's kind of projected that this year we're on track to break 1,000 people a day in Florida. 90% of the market demand now is US. Wow. So it caused me, because of the COVID crisis, it caused me and my company to shift from focusing on development sales, new pre-construction development sales, to selling existing homes, be it a house or be it a condo, it doesn't matter, it's still a home. Why? South Americans love buying pre-construction, and they love waiting 3, 4, 5 years to move into a building. Americans know they want it now. Now is now. So I decided, since the South American market is seriously contracted, I'm going to go where the demand really is. It was really that simple. It was the demand that turned me, not my genius. Americans are coming here, and they want to live in South Florida now. They want to enjoy this beautiful weather now. They want to enjoy these low mortgage rates now. Now is now. So I shifted, and I spend 90% of my time now managing and Related ISG, recruiting agents for Related ISG, and trying to become one of the most respected brands for general real estate here in South Florida. So there was another crisis that obviously caused me to have to reinvent myself again, but it's still real estate. It's just, instead of working on condo projects, it's general real estate. Still real estate.
Well, yeah, and so you're partners with the developer, right? And what you do.
Yes.
And the developers you partner with are still the top developers in Miami, even though you're shifting for the new buyers now. So it sounds like, do you have it? How does that work? Do you have it kind of all covered? New construction development across resale? And how do they balance out?
I sleep a lot. It's kind of hard. I feel like I'm running the bases all the time. Yes, I do work with Related. I am the chief residential consultant for Swire Properties. Swire is the biggest real estate developer in the world. They're based out of Hong Kong, and they've developed some magnificent real estate here in downtown Miami, particularly the Brickell City Center. I work with them. I work with a company called Property Markets Group out of New York. I work with a lot of the big players in advising them about mostly inventory levels, pricing changes, while I'm running general real estate. And no, it's not that hard. I have a wonderful group of senior managers around me that allow me to play the role of CEO as the CEO's role has been defined in the 21st century. CEOs are no longer widget counters. We don't take attendance. The CEOs of the 21st century, they sell the vision of what the company is providing, either in the form of a service or a product. That's what the CEOs do. They're constantly selling that service, not just to potential clients, mostly to their employees. They have to remind their employees, their team members, what this is all about. That's the new CEO. And that, if you do your job properly, you're creating a true sense of culture within the organization. And today, that's the mindset that most Fortune 500 companies are preaching through their CEOs. And that's what I'm trying to do.
So to repeat that, the old CEO, what a CEO used to be was kind of a head count, keeping everybody there.
Yeah, they were more of a chief operating officer than a chief executive officer. You know, they were making sure that people were showing up on time, that there was enough coffee in the cafeteria, that healthcare, the health benefits were there, that they even played the role to some extent of human resource director. They played the role of to some extent, a chief financial officer. A CEO back in the 20th century wore a lot of those kinds of hats. The CEO today, no, he or she is your best salesperson. But it has to be authentic. You've got to sell with integrity the product or service that you're providing the world. And what I've learned is that the people you have to spend most of your time with are the people that work for you. Because if they're truly inspired, they'll do all the selling for you. But they have to believe that you're steering this ship in a direction that they truly, in their hearts, believe in. This is not a smoke and mirrors game. This is a lot of work, and this is a lot of face time with your people, and that's what I try to do.
You go ahead.
No, so when you're asking how do you handle the developers and general real estate at the same time, I've got a really wonderful group of people around me that like what we're doing.
So in what you do in motivating employees and working with you is you essentially are creating an environment. Well, two things. You're dealing with real estate agents who are very independent, strong-willed people who are going to do things the way they're going to do. And you've got, I'm saying that as a stereotype. And on the other end, you've got employees. And you're working with all of those guys together to get them in sync with the same vision?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then if I'm working for a particular developer and I'm competing with the developer across the street, first of all, I won't take on the assignment unless I really believe I can compete. And then my job is to coach my team on how we're going to compete with style and grace, but also with determination. Never negative selling. That stuff will always. That's just so cheesy and so yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
No, it has to be done with integrity more than ever. And I think social media is what's kind of taken the veil off of anything that's not ripe with true integrity, because any false move is reported very quickly. Any false information.
In the 80s. Yeah.
Yes. So you got to be a lot more thoughtful about every step you take.
How do you know when your team, and we'll relate this back to real estate agents, but for all of us leading teams and growing ourselves, how do you know the difference how do you know when your team is on board and when your team is in line with your vision? And how did you learn to do it? Have you ever had any really botches in your career where you're like, okay, this is the lesson I learned to get this right?
Here's the best way I can answer that question. I never think I have it right. I never do, because as we said, in maybe 10 years ago, I did think I had it right. And then I went to go play golf, or I went for like a 3-hour lunch, mixed with some wonderful Cabernets from Northern California. Not so much anymore. I still enjoy a nice cab, don't get me wrong. But I don't think I ever get it right. And part of that is because as we started this conversation, real estate is a dynamic business and it changes almost every week, a little bit. In a month, it changes more than a little bit. And in 6 months, it changes a lot. Well, in order to stay ahead of or in step with those changes, you cannot assume that the people that are part of your team understand, totally see what you see, in the shifting sands of real estate. That's your job, is to kind of see it, anticipate it, and talk it through. Not quite so neurotically, but anticipating that things are going to change. And the game plan that you brought to the table today on Wednesday is not going to work on Thursday necessarily. So I think if I've learned anything from it, is I just never believe I've got it right. It's like my golf swing. I'm always working on it. Always working on it.
You can always be better, but being present and being agile. And what I'm hearing is, I find in my business a lot of times, like, wow, these guys have got it. Wow. And that's because you've been present and you've made the plan and you've been there. And if you step back, that might be that time to watch out.
You've got to, yeah. And I it's very time consuming, but there isn't a CEO on the planet that doesn't tell you that they need to be present. It's like raising your family. You need to be present always. It's time consuming. It can wear on your own nerves because who leads the leader? You've got to have, there's a lot of self-talk that goes on, a lot. There's a lot of that. So well, hold on, let me just give you the corollary to that. Sometimes the receptionist in my company can inspire me more than my CFO. And they have a way of sometimes, you never know where a good idea is going to come from and who is going to be the one that presents it. And when everybody's kind of lined up and they really are pulling in the same direction, you just never know where a good idea is going to come from. So while I do an awful lot of work on myself to keep myself motivated and inspired, if you're a good CEO, you get a lot of that returned to you from the people in your organization unexpectedly. And the unexpected inspiration is the one that is the most profound, I have discovered. You just didn't expect it.
The unexpected inspiration is the one that is usually the most profound.
Yep. You never know who's going to whisper in your ear when you most need it. And, oh my God, thank you so much. You're right. Yeah. After hours of laboring over something that brought you no reasonable conclusion that could work, some angel that answered the phone said something that changed all the colors in that kaleidoscope you call your brain.
Well, what it leads me to think as well, as then you said earlier, asking questions. I've found in leading a team that when I just stop and ask a question or kind of make it their problem for a minute, or just ask questions like, hey, here's what we're trying to do. You're the one running the system. What would you do?
Yeah.
And like little strokes of genius, because you paused and realized, like, I'm just guiding and leading. They're in it every day. They know.
You got it. And the trick to what, and if you can make them say that without one iota of defensive-ness, as if their opinion really does matter, as if they really do know more about this particular subject matter than you ever will, and they feel your sincerity and that I really do want to have you get your opinion on this. Now watch the genius show up. And it's not you. You're just the one directing it. You get the credit because you're
being humble. There's something about being humble, right? I mean, it's kind of what you just said. It's true.
Listen, well, if you're not, your life has a way, God, whatever, has a way of making you look really foolish. There are very few narcissists that wind up as the CEO of any company because they get found out very quickly. If you don't come to the table with a true sense of a little bit of neurosis, knowing perfectly well that things can change on a dime for reasons that are totally out of our hands. Example, Corona-19. Mm-hmm. Things can change on a dime. And if you don't approach every day with a little bit of humility and gratefulness, you're not going to be ever considered the leader, not just the CEO, a sales director, a leader of a team. You just won't be considered that person. My friend Tom Daly, I was telling you about, who God, I miss him so much. I worked for him for about 10 years. And he said to me one day, you're going to be a good leader one day. You don't want to know why you're going to be a good leader? No, tell me, why am I going to be a good leader? Because you're a great follower. I never forgot that lesson either. I followed a guy I trusted. I followed a guy I knew was smarter than me. And I followed a guy that worked even harder than I did. And I thought I worked pretty hard. I followed somebody I trusted. Those kinds of people are the future leaders of companies and divisions and who knows what else. It's an interesting irony, isn't it?
Really?
You're just not born a leader. You're born, if you're a good follower, then you know what the people that you're leading are feeling.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly. Funny how it all works.
It's funny how some of the greatest listing agents also represent buyers and go through the houses. You know, I got in this business only, actually, believe it or not, doing listings. And one day I was like, I can't even understand what these buyers agents are talking about. I've got to learn that.
Mm-hmm.
This. What is the difference between, what was your biggest aha shifting into a role of leadership, CEO, that capacity of our industry, when you shifted from real estate agent to running people, running teams, now CEO of a huge brokerage, 400 agents in South Florida? What do you find the biggest difference is?
I think the best way I can answer that question, when I was selling and I was taking a listing, or I was selling somebody the listing I had or someone else's listing, you know perfectly well. You're on stage. You're performing. You have to be knowledgeable. You have to be confident, and you have to ooze trustworthiness. And there's nobody that there's very few people you can lean to help you with that. You're on your own. In that moment in time, you are on your own. When I became the leader of this company, I realized I was in the same role. Instead of convincing somebody to give me the listing of their home, or selling somebody on this beautiful brand new, waterfront home here in South Florida, I was selling the people that were working for me my competency and my trustworthiness all over again. So what I have come to learn through other CEOs, that 90% of all CEOs of Fortune 500 companies came from the sales departments of their respected companies. And that makes so much sense to me, because they're salespeople. They understand the art of communication. Not that, and they also deeply understand that it has to be grounded in deep integrity. So I think that any good listing agent that might be listening to this program, or a selling agent that thinks one day they might want to be in a leadership role, if you really do develop your sales skills, particularly in the high end, which I know you know a lot about now, the seeds of being a good corporate leader are there. That's what I learned. The transition wasn't that much. What I realized that the boot camp that being a listing agent and a selling agent was like, made me, assuming I am a good leader, made me a decent leader.
Now let's flip that. As a leader of all of these agents and watching all of these real estate agents, you see a lot of deals, a lot of situations all at once. What is the common denominator of successful agents versus agents frustrated, not getting where they are, and even perhaps unsuccessful?
That's a good question. I'll go back to I'm going to go back to the word competency. There's a lot to learn in real estate when you're taking you're taking high-end listings now. When you're taking high-end listings from these very wealthy people, most of these folks are self-made. They've been to the circus. They've seen the elephant in the strings. They don't want to hear a canned spiel. Your competency is often grounded in experience. And what I tell a lot of young agents is that, once again, going back to the outset of this program, if real estate is in your DNA, you will, in time, ascend to that top 20% that produce 80% of the business. Because understand something. Oh, excuse me 1 second. I just got a call on my cell phone. I believe in the Pareto Principle. 20% of the people produce 80% of the results. 20% of your employees create 80% of the human resource problems. The Pareto Principle is amazing how it works. Those that have the real estate DNA in them and they're willing to learn and become competent will become a part of the 20% in time. I say that to everybody that joins this company, that joins my company. There's an it factor in every top real estate agent. And I refer to it as the DNA. You either have it or you don't. And I can coach you on how to take a listing. I can coach you on what in my Miami report matters and what doesn't. The information that you need to learn that will inspire people to make them realize you know what you're talking about. But this is a 365-day business you're about to enter. And if you don't seem to mind it much, it's because you've got the DNA. And within a year, 2, if you're a quick learner, a year, if you're a reasonable learner, in 2 years, you can become part of that 20%. I don't sugarcoat it. I don't tell them, oh, you're so beautiful. You're so handsome. I'm so impressed with your academic credentials. Wow, you come from the proper family lineage. No, I tell them straight up, I've learned that real estate's it's got to think to it. There's like this computer chip in those that make it. Because they don't seem to mind the 365 days. Doesn't mean that they don't enjoy a day off. A nice cab, the bottle of cab from Northern California. So what I try to do is let them know you will learn quickly whether this is for you or not.
Wow.
And if it is for you, and I can't tell you that, you will be able to tell you that. If it is for you, you're going to probably be a little bit, so much like me, but like a lot of other high-end producers I know. You're going to be the type of person that asks a lot of questions and slowly rise like the cream rises to the top. You'll be recognized by your peers, by your colleagues, by your competitors as somebody that has that chip. Anyway, that's how maybe I didn't say that 20 years ago. I do today because I've come to learn that's the thing that separates, once again, the top 20% from the 80%. And the Pareto Principle is stubborn. It's non-negotiable. It's just amazing to me how it plays out in almost every facet of life.
So in that too, I heard you kind of slipped in there for everybody who didn't, or you correct me if I misheard that, was you said you either have it or you don't, but something else you said was asking questions.
Yeah, well, you either have it or you don't. You're either inquisitive about this business you think you want to get into, or you're not. Real estate interests you or it doesn't. If you're getting into it because you failed at a bunch of other stuff and you're kind of hoping this is going to be your lifeline, you're not. I don't know if that's going to work for you.
Yeah.
If you find yourself just kind of fascinated with the moving parts that real estate seems to present in everyone's lives, whether you're in real estate or not, if you're like me, and you're probably the same, I still marvel. I really do. I marvel at watching these erector sets get built that we call either office buildings or condo towers. I get to walk through them with construction hard hats, and I see thousands of guys, men walking, and women today, working in these buildings, assembling these buildings. It blows me away. That's I think the giddiness you have to have in your tummy for this business, because there's going to be a lot more roadblocks than you're going to find. Let me say it differently. Okay. You're going to experience a lot more headwind than you're going to feel tailwind. You will. That's the reality of life and this business.
Exactly.
And if you've got that DNA, you'll handle it.
Push through it.
And if you don't, you won't.
Inquisitive, push through it, and you got it or you don't. Alexa asked me that the other day, and I said the same thing.
What's this headwind mean? What's that headwind mean? And if you have the right mentors around you, most of the times they'll minimize it to what it really does mean, because usually it doesn't mean much. At the moment, it seems like a lot, but in the big picture, not so much. That
even starts because I'm sure you see I love to take notes, and so that I focus. It's like my organic Adderall.
You do.
You talked about it's because I'm compartmentalizing and listening, and I want to reshare this stuff. But you talked about earlier, and I've lost the notes, but you talked about these 3 things about mentors, learning, asking questions, finding the right mentors, learning, asking questions. Don't get attached to your ego, and learn about timing.
Yeah, ego results. Don't get attached to your results, which is usually always,
That's a yes.
always, it's usually always wrapped around by your ego. Yeah, let all that go. Let all that go. If you've got the right mentor group around you, because you're not afraid to ask questions, I promise you, most of those mentors had mentors. Most of those mentors were good followers. Now they're leaders. They understand what you're doing, and they're happy to help. You and I call them angels, because they are. And they show up tall, short, skinny, fat, men, women, all sorts of colors. They show up in lots of different flavors, but they show up when you're looking for them. They do. It's amazing how many are out there. I'm not the only one that was gifted with mentors. Everybody that's ever had any level of success knows exactly what I'm talking about. So do you.
You just said they show up when you're looking for them.
Yep. It's amazing how it works. But they do.
This is going by way too fast, because we already have to do like the final three.
Okay.
Final three questions, but I love this. We could do this for 3 hours.
Do I get to ask you where your accent's from?
Mm-mm.
No? Okay. I love your Southern accent. I love it. I went to
Well, I'm in Atlanta. I'm in Atlanta. Our team is based in Atlanta. However, this accent comes from South Georgia. Just a couple hours above Florida. But not even like an hour drive to Florida.
I went to college at Virginia Tech. So it reminded me very much of my 4 years there.
There you go. That's a Blacksburg, isn't it?
Blacksburg, VA. Yep, sure is. Yep, I think it is.
Long time ago. And my sister's up there.
Small world.
Final three questions.
Final three. Here we are. Okay.
Yes, I know already. So, number one, I'm kind of sad. I'm disappointed. This has gone by way too fast. Number one, what's your biggest, or what do you think has been your biggest resource in your success? Or best resource?
I read a book a long time ago called The Road Less Traveled by a guy named Scott Peck. And in that book, he said there's two types of people in the world. There are neurotics and there are personality disorders. And when I read that book, I realized I was more prone to being, and you can either be chocolate or vanilla, but you can't be neither. So I realized reading that book, I was a little bit on the neurotic side, and that saved me. So I would encourage you to read the book.
Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. I read that. That book was hot about what, 30? I read it as a teenager.
I read it in my mid 30s. So I read it in the early 90s, and it let's just say it changed my compass a little bit, or made me realize that I'm allowed to be a little more comfortable in my own skin, because I was a little bit on the neurotic side. But that's kind of what shaped me and allowed me to be where I am today. So
again, because I've got another question on this question. Neurotics or personality disorders, what's the difference? I should know.
Neurotic people feel what other people are feeling. Neurotic people take responsibility for things that go wrong. If you're a little bit too neurotic, you may take on more responsibility than you should. Neurotic people tend to have much healthier family relationships, friends, romantic relationships, etc. An extreme version of a personality disorder is a narcissist, and they are experts in finding scapegoats for everything that goes wrong. They are never responsible. It's always the other guy. It's always the other girl. It's always something else outside of them. They never survive as leaders, ever. So the only time you would survive if you've got that kind of a personality is if your name is Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. You've got to have invented something that's so friggin' extraordinary that your personality doesn't really matter. But most of us are not gifted like that. So you've got to. Those are some of the differences. Scott Peck does a much better job of explaining it, but that's kind of it in a Chinese cookie.
If you're a neurotic, can you still be a Steve Jobs or a Bill Gates or a?
Without a doubt, you can. Without a doubt, you can. And without a doubt, you can. I'm just using them as examples. I'm not saying they weren't neurotic. Although I read a biography on Steve Jobs. Let's just say he was very, very eccentric, but clearly a genius, and so, maybe he was a little bit on the personality disorder side, but look what the hell he did. I'm speaking to you by Zoom on my Apple phone. This guy completely changed. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and a lot of other baby boomers completely changed the way we live. Completely. I say baby boomers because I am one, and I'm really proud of my baby boom generation.
Yeah, what am I? Gen X.
You're Gen X. Gen X, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, the Steve Jobs, what you just said, I remember when people were like, yeah, you'll live off your phones. I was like, are you kidding me? No way. Who would do that? Here we are.
Here we are. Here we be.
The next question was, and we might need to skip or we might want to elaborate, is there a book that you recommend for your life or career? Clearly, Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck is one. Is it the one?
No, there's three I always recommend. That's one of them.
Oh, good.
Look, Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich is a Bible. It really should be treated as a Bible for business, because it just has a way of directing your mindset, of allowing you to control the thoughts that create your mindset. It's possible. You can do it. And Napoleon Hill, that book was all about, Napoleon Hill interviewing, the great industrialists of America back in the, in the 20s and 30s. And that book is all about the common denominators amongst all of those top guys, the Carnegies, the Mellons, the Rockefellers. What is it that they do every single day? It's different from everybody else. And moreover, what he did was he found the common denominators amongst all those incredibly successful men. Back then it was men. It's not a chauvinistic remark, it's just telling like it is.
How sensitive we are today.
Yeah, well, I have three sisters, and
I appreciate it because we could laugh, but I want you to get your point out. So the common denominator of all of those people, men, is what is called Think and Grow Rich, and all of those chapters are divided into how they think and how they discipline their lives, and it can be easily. It is very adaptable to September of 2021. And then the other one that I recommend is a book called The Power of Myth. It's a deep book. It's all about perceiving religion as metaphor more than literal, and how it transcends into business ethics. It was written by a guy named Joseph Campbell, who was best friends with a guy named George Lucas, who created this movie thing called Star Wars. Star Wars is mostly based on this book. And when you read the book and then you watch Star Wars again, Star Wars is a different movie for you. I can't.
Anyway, those are my three books.
And then the third one is
The Power of Myth. Well, yeah. So you have The Road Less Traveled, and then Road by Scott Peck, Think and Grow Rich, and then along the way, I've recommended The Power of Myth to almost everybody that I spend a lot of time with, and those that have dared to read it, it's kind of a oh my God, yeah. And I was raised Catholic, so I was raised in a very disciplined, religious, literal world. And when I read this book, let's just say religion opened up to me in a more meaningful way. And I believe it's transcended into the way I conduct myself as a businessman in a nice way, I hope.
Yes. Well, you see, the more life goes by, the more those principles and lessons just reveal themselves relentlessly.
Yeah, they sure do. They sure do. And and how less judgmental you become, because you never know what tomorrow is going to bring.
So true.
And why it's going to bring what it's going to bring. Anyway, we can get deeply philosophical, but sooner or later we're going to need a bottle of red for this.
Because you're talking to me. This is what I do. Okay, last question. If there's one thing that you would hope we remember if we're going to forget everything else we talked about today, what would it be?
Don't get attached to your results. That's simple. You are who you are. You're a gifted, wonderful human being. You are here for a reason. You've chosen whatever field of endeavor, particularly real estate in this case, for a reason. You're going to have good weeks. You're going to have bad weeks. Don't get attached to it. Just try to become the best version of you, and the rest will fall into place. When you get attached to results, you stop evolving. Don't do that. Don't do that.
When you get attached to results, you stop evolving.
Yep. That's spoken from a 64-year-old man.
That should even speak to the ego.
It totally does.
Craig, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I enjoyed this very much. Thank you. When you come down to Miami, give me a ring.
I will. Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. If you like this episode, please share it with friends. To find more episodes, search Jere Metcalf Podcast on any platform for podcasts, or go to JereMetcalfPodcast.com. That's JereMetcalf podcast.com.